Hey guys, Steinixos here. So today we will be scaling Luffy and the One Piece verse in terms of speed. Now I'm not quite sure why, but for some reason, I always see people downplaying the speed of One Piece characters. And that seems a little weird to me. So in this video, let us actually have a comprehensive look at the One Piece verse and see if we can come to a sensible conclusion. Alright, so let us start off with the most basic metric of measurement, and that is dodging bullets. Dodging bullets even at point blank range is a casual feat even in the earliest chapters of One Piece. Here we have Zoro at Whiskey Peak, being surrounded by many people at a close range who all have a variety of guns, all firing at him simultaneously, and he easily dodges the bullets. And again, in this same Alabasta arc, at an even closer range, we have another person sneaking up on Zoro and firing a gun from right above him. And again, he easily dodges this. And yet again, here we have Sanji pre-Skypiea arc at Jaya Island with a gun pointed directly to his head at point blank range, and he casually dodges the bullet. Zoro wasn't even that worried about Sanji being hit. So being able to at least casually react faster than bullets is a basic speed feat in the One Piece verse. But how fast does a bullet travel? Now obviously, this depends on the type and model of gun used to fire the bullet. The general range of a rifle's bullet speed is between 180 meters per second to 1500 meters per second. And the general range of the speed of bullets fired from a shotgun range from 335 meters per second to 427 meters per second. Now in one specific situation at Whiskey Peak where Igaram fired at Zoro, we know specifically that he used a shotgun. So at minimum, given that there was negligible distance between Igaram and Zoro, we know that Zoro had to react and move at the very least at greater than 335 meters per second, the lower limit of speed for a shotgun. But in most situations, we don't know the specific type and model of the gun used, such as when Sanji dodged the bullet at point blank range pre-Skypiea arc at Jaya Island, or multiple different gun types and models are used simultaneously, such as when Zoro casually dodged all the shots from the pirates at Whiskey Peak. So as it relates to scaling involving bullets, we will use the average speed of a bullet, which is 759 meters per second. Now to put this into perspective, the speed of sound is 343 meters per second. Thus a reaction time of greater than at least supersonic, or 2 times the speed of sound, is a casual feat for characters at the level of pre-time skip Zoro, Sanji and Luffy, who obviously scales to them. But note, this is just an at least reaction time. It still doesn't suggest a max reaction time. So let us go a little higher and discuss lightning. So some people make the case that Luffy is definitely slower than lightning pre-time skip because during his fight with Enel, he was shown to say, "Damn it, I can't keep up with his movement." Now this panel is just a fan mistranslation that leads to confusion. In the official Viz translation, it was clearly stated that what was actually happening is that Luffy was having a hard time getting around Enel's observation haki. So it wasn't the case that Enel was just purely outspeeding him, and we know this for a fact, because subsequently, when Enel could no longer predict Luffy's movements beforehand, Luffy was easily able to dodge all of Enel's strikes on instincts alone. So that argument doesn't hold, and Luffy clearly demonstrates that he's faster than Enel. And then you'll have some other people claiming that Luffy can't be faster than lightning because he was hit by lightning at some points during his fight with Enel. And this is a really silly argument, because the first time during the fight when Luffy was hit by lightning was when he was mid-air flying towards Enel, which Enel knew he was going to do with observation haki. Thus it would obviously be a little difficult for him to alter his trajectory mid-air with no support, especially given the size of the bolt of lightning. You'll realize that he didn't even try to hit the lightning away, despite clearly having enough time to reflexively put his hands up in the blocking position. And that is because at this point, he had not yet known that because of his devil fruit, he's both immune to and can interact with lightning. And then, after this first instance when Luffy realizes that lightning does absolutely nothing to him, it is clearly shown that he does not even try to dodge the other 2 lightning attacks. I mean, why would he? That was the whole point of those scenes, to show us that lightning does absolutely nothing to Luffy, so he didn't even need to try to dodge. And I mean, even with L-Thor, Luffy did successfully react to the lightning. I mean, yeah, he obviously wasn't able to clear the range by himself, but I think that's to be expected when you are suddenly faced with a half a village-sized lightning strike, and your first action after successfully realizing this is to grab the person beside you and to try to carry them out with you rather than trying to dodge by yourself. Like, remember, Luffy was manually trying to carry someone outside of this huge range. He wasn't trying to escape just by himself, nor was he using some super high-speed Pegasus that he could rest the person on. He was literally trying to carry someone out of a half a village striking range. So using this argument to say that Luffy is not faster than lightning literally makes no sense. And I mean, it obviously doesn't hold up, because in another instance where Luffy was with Nami, thus he obviously could not afford to get struck by lightning, being that Nami is a normal human, while riding a high-speed waver, we see Luffy react fast enough to not simply just dodge, but instead literally kick the bolt of lightning away. And this obviously is not an outlier, because in the same fight at a later point, here we have Luffy while being weighed down by a giant gold ball attached to his hand, and he casually dodged a lightning strike sent by Enel and then proceeded to punch Enel before he could react. Before the shot landed on Enel, Enel himself literally said it was too fast for him. So there's more than enough direct evidence to suggest that Luffy is faster than lightning, and to disregard them as outliers is just silly. And we can further show this indirectly, because during this same Skypiea arc, even characters who are obviously slower than Luffy have been shown to be able to react to lightning speed attacks. Usopp and Nami were literally both shown to dodge a lightning strike from Enel at literally the last second. And again, you can't claim that this is an outlier, because on another occasion in Skypiea, Nami was literally shown to redirect one of Enel's strikes with her climb attack. Enel himself confirmed that this was what Nami did. And if you're still unconvinced and want even more, here's yet another occasion of Nami dodging a lightning bolt sent from Enel at close range. So at this point, there's literally stacks of consistent direct and indirect evidence that scales Luffy to having a faster than lightning reaction time, combat attack, and continuous combat movement speed. But exactly how fast is lightning? Now, lightning is a little complex, but in essence it consists of two phases, an invisible leader phase and a visible discharge phase. This invisible leader phase describes the time before the lightning strikes, when the pathway that lightning will eventually take is basically established via atmospheric changes. And then we have the discharge phase, also called the return stroke, and this describes the actual discharge of electric current along this pathway. So this discharge phase or return stroke is what you would actually see as lightning, and it is the point that you can actually get shocked. So when a character like Enel fires a bolt of lightning, whether from the clouds or from his hands, and we see it actually moving, it is by definition already in the discharge phase. So the discharge phase or return stroke moves at about 220 million miles per hour, which is roughly about 1/3 the speed of light. So at minimum, this already puts Luffy and his crew in the relativistic speed range as it relates to reaction time, given that even Nami can dodge and redirect lightning, and Luffy would also have at least relativistic combat attack and continuous combat movement speed, given that even Enel is calling his punch fast before being blitzed. However, I won't be using this value even though it is the correct one to use, and this is because I want to underestimate these guys as much as possible. So instead of the discharge phase speed, we will be using the speed of the leader phase, which is much slower at 220,000 miles per hour, which is a little over 290 times faster than the speed of sound. And this puts pre-time skip Skypiea arc Luffy and his crew in the at least massively hypersonic speed range, which represents speeds that are 100 to 1000 times the speed of sound. So now again, let us go higher. After the Skypiea arc in the Water 7 Ineos Lobby arc, we met the CP9 members. Now one of the good things about the CP9 as it relates to scaling is that their overall physical capabilities are actually quantified and expressed in numbers called Doriki units, something more or less similar to power levels measured by scouters in early DBZ. Now for reference, I would like to stress that even though the Doriki units was measured with a kick or a punch, Doriki scaling is implied to be an overall measure of all the normal physical capabilities of an individual. So for reference, a common armed soldier on average is said to have a Doriki of around 10, and a superhuman is someone who has a Doriki of 500 or higher. Now this is the rating of Doriki among the CP9. As you can see, human form Rob Lucci has a Doriki value of approximately 4 times greater than that of Bluno and 6 times greater than that of Khalifa. So this would suggest that as it relates to physical attributes like strength, speed, etc., that human form Rob Lucci is at least 4 times greater than Bluno and 6 times greater than Khalifa. Now in Luffy's first fight against Blueno, Luffy was shown to be clearly slower. He couldn't land a single hit when Blueno didn't want him to, and at some points Luffy couldn't even perceive Blueno's movement. And remember, this Luffy is post-Skypiea arc Luffy, who we know is at least massively hypersonic, even after we underestimated as much as we could. And Blueno is unequivocally faster than this Luffy. But the problem is that we don't have a specific scaling factor to multiply by, so I will underestimate Blueno to the point of absurdity and just assume he is the same speed as Luffy or negligibly faster. And again, we know that this is false. Blueno is obviously much faster than Luffy at this point, but using this assumption that Blueno is the same speed as this Luffy, given that we know that human form Rob Lucci is at least 4 times faster than Blueno, as suggested by the Doriki scale, that would mean that human form Rob Lucci is at least 4 times faster than the speed of lightning. This would scale Rob Lucci to at least 880,000 miles per hour, which is the same as saying at least 146 times faster than the speed of sound. And I mean, we know that this is an underestimation because firstly, as I already said, we assume that Blueno is not faster than Luffy when we know that he actually is. And secondly, because we know that Khalifa, the weakest member in CP9 that should be at least 6 times weaker than Rob Lucci, was shown to react to and block a lightning strike from Nami. Thus this puts human form Rob Lucci in the at least massively hypersonic plus speed range, which represents speeds 1000 to 8810 times the speed of sound. And remember, this is an at least speed, it is not a suggested max. Now after Luffy got his second gear power up and went back to fight the CP9, at base Luffy was now able to dodge Blueno's attacks, keep up with Blueno when he moved, and actually land attacks on Blueno that Blueno didn't want him to hit. So at this point, base Luffy had obviously become faster than Blueno, who was trying his best. Then second gear Luffy was just exponentially faster than Blueno, even when given time to prepare. Blueno could not react to a gear second punch, and when Luffy was moving using second gear, Blueno now could literally not see him. And similarly, at base, Luffy was now able to fight equally with human form Rob Lucci, and like Blueno, human form Rob Lucci could not dodge Luffy's gear second attack. So at this point, we can comfortably say that base Luffy, like human form Rob Lucci, is at least massively hypersonic plus, and gear second Luffy is exponentially faster than Luffy's base form. But there is even more, because Lucci then transformed into his hybrid Zoan form. And remember, a Zoan's physical attributes like strength and speed exponentially increase when they activate their Devil Fruit, and the Doriki scale did not include the additional boost granted by the Devil Fruit. So hybrid form Lucci is definitely much stronger and faster than human form Lucci, but there's no specific multiplier that tells us how much a Zoan's Devil Fruit increase the user's physical attributes. So let us underestimate this as much as we possibly can and assume it only doubles it. So this brings Lucci to at least 1,760,000 miles per hour, which is the same as saying at least 2,293 times faster than the speed of sound, which is still in the massively hypersonic plus speed range. But even with this Zoan boost, Luffy's gear second attack was still too fast for hybrid form Lucci, and at times, hybrid form Lucci could not even perceive Luffy's movement while Luffy was using second gear. So we know that gear second Luffy is faster than even hybrid form Lucci, but again, we don't have a specific scale in multiplication factor, so I won't attempt to say by how much. And yes, hybrid form Lucci did eventually start to intercept the gear second attacks, but that was after Luffy was becoming heavily injured and fatigued. Lucci himself even commented that the speed of Luffy's gear second attacks was decreasing, so this is not a valid argument against gear second Luffy being much faster than hybrid form Lucci. So after the Water 7 Enies lobby arc, we can be sure that Luffy, who is now faster than Rob Lucci, is at least massively hypersonic plus in reaction time, combat movement speed, and combat attack speed. And Zoro and Sanji, who were fighting the second and third command of CP9, would scale below Luffy, but would also scale with him in the at least massively hypersonic plus speed range. But this is where it gets interesting, because on Thriller Bark, a heavily fatigued and injured Zoro, who had been fighting all night against Gekomora, was then clearly shown to be able to dodge not one, not two, not three, but rather multiple light speed pad cannons. Kuma literally says he deflects the air at light speed. Now it's curious, some people will try to discredit this feat by saying, oh, the pad cannons don't actually move at light speed. Light speed is only necessary for the process of creation of the pad cannons, but the cannons themselves move at some different speed. Now this argument makes very little sense to me for multiple reasons. Firstly, Ursa's shock is a much larger shockwave based attack, and Kuma obviously doesn't need to deflect the air at light speed to do it. So why is light speed deflection suddenly a requirement for these much smaller shockwave attacks? And you can't say, oh, it's because he uses two hands for Ursa's shock, whereas for the pad cannon he only uses one hand, therefore it needs to move at a certain speed to get the air compressed in that shape. We know that is obviously false, because Kuma, using just one hand at way slower than light speeds, extracted all the pain from Luffy and compressed it in a huge pad-shaped structure. So if one hand and far below light speed is sufficient for the deflection and compression of abstract and intangible things such as pain and fatigue, why would it suddenly become a requirement that he definitely needs light speed to deflect and compress non-abstract, actually tangible structures like molecules of air? That makes no sense. There is literally nothing to suggest that he needs to reflect air at specifically light speed to make a pad cannon. Therefore, it's obvious that he chose to deflect it at light speed so that it moves at light speed. And I mean, even if that specific speed is required for its creation, the fact is he's still pushing the air at that speed. So why would it move at a different speed, especially when they're at such a close range? And I mean, at the most fundamental level, just think about it. If Kuma can deflect air at light speed to create something, what would then stop him from deflecting his light speed creation at light speed? I mean, didn't we just establish that he can deflect air at the speed of light, at least in the creation phase? So this argument makes literally no sense regardless of how you look at it. And I mean, calling it an outlier also makes no sense, because in the same fight, on literally the next page, Zoro was shown to dodge Kuma's laser beam at a very close range. Now, he wasn't able to fully clear the explosion area because of course he was still injured, but he did dodge the beam. And of course we know that this beam is directly based on Kizaru's light fruit, thus it is definitely light speed. So that is two feats back to back in literally the same fight, completely consistent with at least the relativistic speeds for a heavily injured and fatigued Zoro. And I mean, in this same fight, immediately after the island had just been devastated by an Ursa shock that knocked out almost everyone else, when Zoro thought that Luffy was in danger, we saw where he cranked out his top speed and literally blitzed Kuma. Like, there are just too many things happening here for you to try and discredit Zoro's feats. I mean, he literally then topped all of this off by then surviving something that Kuma said was literally going to kill him, which definitely was not an exaggeration. Zoro should have died, and he not only survived, but he was still standing and remained conscious. So Zoro dodging lightspeed attacks is far from the most surprising thing that happened here. As a matter of fact, on Unsabo Archipelago pre-time skip, there are multiple other instances of characters dodging this light speed beam. Here is pre-time skip Captain Kidd dodging the beam fired by a Pacisfista. Here is pre-time skip base Luffy dodging the beam fired by a Pacisfista. And even at Marineford we have Luffy and Ivankov dodging the beams. And I'll repeat, this was pre-time skip, so neither Zoro, Luffy nor Captain Kidd had observation haki. Thus we have multiple instances which consistently demonstrate that pre-time skip Luffy and Zoro, even at base and heavily injured and fatigued, are at least relativistic. So now let us move to post-time skip Luffy. And now basically the feat that we are immediately given as he came back is Luffy dodging a light speed laser from a Pacisfista yet again. But this time, he casually dodges it and calls it too slow. To call this feat an outlier is absolutely silly. As we already said, Luffy and other characters like Kid and Zoro were already dodging these beams pre-time skip. The only difference now is that whereas before it might have been a little hard to dodge, at this point it is literally nothing to him. Oda went out of his way to give us dialogue confirmation of showing us just how much Luffy improved by making him say the light speed beam is too slow. Now at this point some people will try to discredit this feat by saying, oh, it's because he has observation haki. Now this argument is pretty silly because we know that observation haki is not some magical technique that automatically allows you to dodge attacks of any speed regardless of your normal reaction time. Like it doesn't matter if you know the literal future trajectory of an attack, you still will not be able to dodge it if you can't already move at least very close to the speed of the attack. We see this clearly in the Luffy vs Kaido fight, where it literally states and shows that Luffy used advanced observation haki to literally look into the future, but he still could not dodge Kaido's attack. So even with observation haki, for Luffy to have been able to dodge that beam of light, he would already need to be able to move at least close to light speed. And I mean, we already knew that he could move at least close to light speed because pre-time skip, when he and the other supernovas did not have observation haki, we saw Kid, Luffy and Zoro dodge this same beam. And then some people will bring up the fact that the Pacisfista was charging the attack before it fired, and therefore that gave Luffy time to prepare, and thus somehow this discredits or makes the feat less impressive. Now firstly, as we just said, even if you can literally see into the future, if you aren't already at least close to the speed of the attack, then you will not be able to dodge. But I mean, remember when Luffy first used Gear Second against Blueno? He literally gave Blueno time to mentally prepare and time to actually start moving, but that did not help Blueno one bit, did it? Because again, even if you know that the attack is coming, if you weren't already able to move at least close to the speed of the attack, then you will not be able to dodge it. And I mean, in the anime, we clearly see that Luffy did not even try to move until after the laser beams were fired and came close to him. And I mean, yes, in the manga only one beam is fired and it doesn't specify a specific sequence because Oda did not draw every single aspect of the interaction in detail. But this is why we have a canon anime. And again, it's not like we only have visual confirmation here. We literally have dialogue of him calling the beam too slow. The intent of showing that Luffy is much faster than this beam of light is quite clear here, and to deny that literally makes no sense under these circumstances. But anyway, so this is where we're at. We understand that pre-time skip base Luffy and Zoro, even in a fatigue state, are clearly at least relativistic, and pre-time skip Luffy's Gear Second at that point would vastly increase his speed, and post-time skip base Luffy is now much faster than even pre-time skip Gear Second Luffy, to the point that he can now even call light speed beams too slow. Thus post-time skip base Luffy is likely at least light speed or relativistic plus if you want to underestimate him, and Gear Second Luffy is likely faster than light. And I mean, this increase in speed is further supported by and completely consistent with his increase in strength. Pre-time skip, it took Luffy going all out from the start with the help of Zoro and Sanji to barely knock out one Pacisfista, and this was directly after that same Pacisfista had just received a coup de vent from Frankie. Then post time skip, Luffy by himself with a single punch is literally causing the Pacisfista to explode. Now we will skip Doflamingo and go straight to Katakuri. Katakuri was unequivocally blitzing Luffy 3 arcs after he called a light beam too slow. Now again, yes, Katakuri was using his advanced observation haki to literally see Luffy's future moves and decide his actions accordingly. But here's the thing, just using observation haki does not guarantee that an attack will hit. For an attack to hit, even when using observation haki, the attack has to move at a speed that is at least very close to the person's normal reaction time. We know this because pre-time skip at Kuja Island, before Luffy knew observation haki, Sander Sonia was using her observation haki to read Luffy's moves before he made them. But because Gear 2nd Luffy at this point was just so far above the speed at which Sander Sonia could attack, even with the help of observation haki predicting Luffy's movement, she just could not touch him. She literally said that she could not keep up. This was also clearly illustrated at Whole Cake Chateau when Katakuri used his observation haki to see that Sanji was going to dodge the bullet from the priest, and then he flicked a jelly bean at Sanji with this future information in mind. But even though Katakuri literally knew Sanji's future movement, the speed at which the jelly bean was moving was just far too slow to actually hit Sanji. So with these examples, you should now clearly understand that observation haki is not something that guarantees a hit regardless of the speed of your attacks. No, observation haki only helps to give you a slight edge if you are already attacking at a speed that is at least very close to the reaction time of the person you are attacking. So this helps to tie together the Enel situation perfectly. What I mean is that when Enel could not use observation haki as a crutch, it was clearly shown that he was not faster than Luffy, but he was able to hit Luffy while using observation haki because his speed of attack was at least very close to Skypiea Arc Luffy's normal reaction time, thus being able to predict Luffy's future movements on top of already being able to attack at very close to Luffy's normal reaction time was what gave him the edge. This is in direct contrast to Sander Sonia, whose attack speed was nowhere close to Gear 2nd Kuja Island Luffy's reaction time. So even with observation haki, she could not make up for the difference and thus she could not hit him. So without a doubt, even with observation haki, for Katakuri to be able to blitz even an immediate post-time skip base Luffy, who called a light speed beam too slow, he would obviously need to attack at least faster than that slow light speed beam for his observation haki to even have a chance at helping him to hit Luffy. If he couldn't attack at least at faster than light speeds, then a situation like with Sander Sonia or Sanji would happen. And remember, the Luffy that Katakuri is fighting is not immediate post-time skip Luffy. It is the Luffy 3 arcs after immediate post-time skip Luffy. And he was blitzing this base Luffy, who is faster. He was also blitzing Gear 4 Boundman, who is exponentially faster than this base Luffy, who we know is faster than the base Luffy 3 arcs ago, who was calling a light speed beam too slow. And remember, in the latter half of the fight, Luffy had definitely gained future sight, but he was still frequently being blitzed by Katakuri. And in the end, even with this future sight, Luffy was still overwhelmed and had to go for Snake Man, a version that is faster than Second Gear and Boundman, to just fight equally against Katakuri. And even then, Katakuri was still dodging Snake Man attacks and was even shown to be blitzing Snake Man at multiple points. So the speed of Katakuri's attacks has obviously far surpassed the light speed beam that base Luffy was calling too slow 3 arcs ago. But here's the thing, this isn't even close to the peak of the One Piece verse, because Wano Luffy, which is Luffy after his fight with Katakuri, and thus who we know is definitely at least at Katakuri's level in terms of speed, and who we also know has sufficiently mastered advanced observation haki, even with this far faster than light speed amp coupled with future sight, he still could not move fast enough to avoid Kaido's attack. So Kaido is now scaling exponentially faster than the post-Katakuri fight Luffy, who is at least at Katakuri's level, and we already know that Katakuri was already exponentially faster than immediate post-time skip Luffy, who at base was calling a lightspeed laser too slow. So in the face of this, to continue to say that Luffy and other high-level One Piece characters are not way faster than Light is just completely silly. And anyone who is at least at Katakuri's level, like first commanders such as Marco, King, and Ben Bettman, are obviously also way faster than Light because they scale to Katakuri. I mean, we saw Marco easily intercept multiple lightspeed beads of light fired by Kizaru towards Whitebeard. As a matter of fact, even characters like Ichiji, who are obviously below Katakuri's level, have lightspeed feats. Ichiji was shown to easily outrun his own lightspeed lasers that he himself had just fired. Niji, another one of the Vinsmoke brothers, is literally stated to move at lightspeed when using his attack, Henry Blazer. Like, I really want to emphasize this point. Even if you were to disregard everything else, for you to say that all or most high-level characters in One Piece scale below lightspeed, you would literally need to be saying that Ichiji and Niji, who are literally stated and shown to move at light speed, are the peak of the One Piece verse. And for you to be saying that high-level characters in One Piece do not scale to faster than light speeds, you would literally need to be saying that there is no high-level character in One Piece that is faster than Ichiji and Niji. So Katakuri, who was literally shown to outspeed and beat Ichiji, is not faster than Ichiji and Niji. And Kaido, the guy who scales way above Katakuri, being that he's an emperor and being that he can blitz post-Katakuri fight Luffy, who at this point scales to at least Katakuri level and definitely has future sight. Yeah, this same Kaido is not faster than Ichiji and Niji. And Big Mom and Shanks, who are obviously above Katakuri and who directly scale to Kaido, are not faster than Ichiji and Niji. And Prime, Whitebeard, Garp, and Sengoku, who scale even higher directly to the Pirate King, Goldie Roger. Yeah, these guys aren't faster than Ichiji and Niji. And really, the first mate of the Pirate King, who was shown to effortlessly outspeed Kizaru while Kizaru was traveling away from him in his full light beam form, and who can casually have a sword fight with Kizaru, and we know that Kizaru would not be swinging his sword at less than the speed of light against Rayleigh, given that he uses a light speed kick to deal with pre-time skip Hawkins, who obviously poses far less of a threat to him than Rayleigh, the first mate of the Pirate King. Yeah, this same Rayleigh is not faster than Ichiji and Niji. Like, this is obviously absurd and just plain false. Ichiji and Niji are mid-level characters who are literally stated and shown to move at light speed. It is obvious that high-level characters like Katakuri and Kaido are way faster than light. Now, the next thing we need to address is by far the silliest thing that I often come across when having this discussion. And what I'm referring to are claims such as when people say, Kizaru is light, but his light attacks and light speed movements aren't actually light speed. And other claims such as when people say, the Pacifista's laser beams are light, but they aren't actually light speed. Now, this is the strangest thing to respond to, because I've never heard someone say, Aokiji's ice is ice, but it isn't actually cold. Or crocodile sand is sand, but it isn't actually dry. Or Ace's fire is fire, but it isn't actually hot. Because that's just silly. We know that at base, a Logia fruit grants a human all of the basic properties of a specific element. So Kizaru, who ate the light fruit, is literally a light man who has the properties of light. Now, light speed is obviously a property of light, and I mean on multiple occasions, we literally see Kizaru moving as a literal beam of light. In his fight against Crachman Apple, he was literally shown to move as a literal beam of light. At Marineford, after being kicked out of the sky by Marco, he was literally propelled downwards out of the sky as a literal beam of light. He doesn't even need to fully turn to a beam of light to apply light speed to his body. We saw this when he chose to retain his human form and still kicked Basil Hawkins with his leg at the speed of light. Kizaru literally says to Basil Hawkins, have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Like, what other speed of light could he have possibly been referencing other than the actual speed of light that we know to be the speed of light? Like, come on guys. And the Pacifista's laser beams are literally stated to be a ray of literal light. And not only that, because to erase any confusion, the Pacifista's light beams are literally stated to be based directly on Kizaru's devil fruit, and of course a property of light is light speed, and all of this is stated in the literal manga itself. This isn't from a movie, nor is it from a databook. It is from the literal canon manga from the author himself. And yes, Kizaru can apply additional properties to the light-based structures that he makes, like giving mass to a sword that is made of light, but that should not be surprising to you, because it is a well-established fact that with training, devil fruits can evolve to do all sorts of madness. We see this when Akaino used his magma to set water on fire, and also when he used his magma to burn Ace, a flame human. We also see this when Doflamingo literally transformed normal ground and buildings into strings using his awakening. And remember, Haki is also in this equation, something that allows you to interface with even an intangible thing such as light, and can be imbued into almost any technique to alter it. So yes, you can get additional or advanced properties added onto your devil fruit, but that doesn't change the fact that at base, a Logia devil fruit gives you the basic properties of the element it represents. So Kizaru, who ate the light fruit, obviously at base has been granted the basic properties of light, such as light speed and intangibility. And the Pacifista's lasers, which are based on this light fruit and are literally light, are obviously light speed. Now before we close this video off, we also need to address the common question of, is Kizaru capped at light speed? This question stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of devil fruits. The crucial fact that people need to remember is that a devil fruit user is both a normal human as well as a devil fruit human. So Kizaru is both a normal man and a light man. Him being a light man just means that without any training whatsoever, he has gained the ability to move at light speed and release light-based attacks. But that does not just suddenly remove his normal human capacity to move below light speed, or to train his body to react to faster than light attacks or move at faster than light speeds. So when Kizaru fires off a light beam, for example, or literally transforms and moves in his full light beam form, that light beam moves at light speed because it is a beam of light that is moving. But when Kizaru has a sword fight with Rayleigh, he obviously has the normal human capacity to swing the sword at any speed he wants. And that can obviously be below light speed, at light speed, or above light speed. He just has the advantage in that, whereas someone else would have to train to be able to swing a sword at light speed, or to be able to kick at light speed, he can just do these things at light speed with no training whatsoever, because he ate the light fruit and thus can apply the light speed property of light to his actions even in human form. So no, Kizaru is not limited to light speed. No Logia is limited to any speed. They are still part human and thus retain their normal human capacity to move at any speed which they train their body to move at. And all the admirals, including Kizaru, obviously scale to at least Katakuri's level, and thus they are all able to react to faster than light attacks and attack at faster than light speeds. Now the last thing I want to talk about is Foxy's Noro beams. Now Foxy's Noro beams are literally stated to be photons. And if you didn't know, photons are what light is made up of, and photons by their very nature are said to always move at the speed of light. And Luffy has clearly been shown to easily dodge these Noro beams, and it wasn't just on one occasion or one single beam. He has been shown to consistently dodge multiple of these Noro beams that are continuously being reflected from a mirror behind him while simultaneously dodging a punching machine. He was even shown to both dodge a Noro beam fired at him and immediately appear behind Foxy, who fired it, to punch him. So using this, we could scale Luffy to at least light speed or relativistic plus if we are downplaying him. The problem here is that Foxy describes the Noro photon as a new type of photon not yet discovered by scientists. Thus some people will argue that because it is new and not much is known about it, we can't just assume it behaves like other photons in terms of speed without some form of confirmation. And I didn't want to get bogged down in that discussion when we already had a character that we we know for sure is the literal light that we know to be light, and multiple derivative laser beams that we know for sure are literally the light that we know to be light. So that is why I decided to exclude Luffy dodging Foxy's Noro beams from the scaling process. And you'll notice I didn't include things like Luffy dodging various explosions or him dodging the silent needle while being more or less half unconscious, because I didn't really think those things were necessary. But anyway, that's basically it. I'm hoping that it is now unambiguously clear that high tier One Piece characters are obviously way faster than light, and even mid tier characters can move at light speed. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section down below, and of course if you like the video then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. But anyway, see you guys next time.